Thank you very much, Madam President, for giving me this great honor to speak once again in this great and venerable chamber on tonight's motion. On a personal note, I say it was a great pleasure to work with you over the last couple of months, and I congratulate you for the fantastic term card you've put together. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 200 years, this society has debated the most pressing issues of its time, and tonight's debate on the implications of artificial intelligence for the way we live is doubtlessly one of the most pressing issues of our time. Before I move into my main argument, I would also like to say some words on the motion and the burden which the proposition bears tonight. This House believes artificial intelligence is an existential threat. We do not know what the threat is to, but from a sort of general understanding, I think we need to adopt a very high burden here materially and assume that we need to show that artificial intelligence is an existential threat to the way we live and to core values which we hold dear. However, we must not show that this will inevitably happen. We must only show that a threat thereof exists. So don't be fooled when the librarian tells you of all the fantastic uses of artificial intelligence, all the prosperity it can bring. We do not dispute this in the slightest. But what the opposition has failed to show so far is that there are adequate safeguards in place which would mitigate the risk which artificial intelligence poses. So my fellow speakers on proposition, no thank you. My fellow speakers have already taken quite a drastic picture of the future with artificial intelligence. I shall go one step back, and I shall not assume artificial intelligence as this godlike menace, but I will move forward from the artificial intelligence. We have generative AI as ChatGPT or other applications which we are already aware of in the foreseeable future. So I will not paint a dystopian, Terminator-esque image of these Frankensteinian creations which suddenly turn on their masters to eliminate them. Instead, I see artificial intelligence as we have it now as a tool which humans can use to further the ends that they set. However, it is an extremely potent tool in doing so, rivaled historically maybe by the World Wide Web, the personal computer, the steam engine and locomotive, and maybe the invention of the wheel. Now, it is clear that because of this potency, artificial intelligence bears the great risk of disrupting society severely. A study by Morgan Stanley shows that 300 million jobs worldwide are at risk of being automated in the sort of foreseeable future, and a McKinsey study shows that 30% of jobs in the United States are at risk of being automated in the next 7 years, so until 2030. And it is especially people from ethnic minority backgrounds who are in occupations which are at risk of being automated. However, it is not only sort of simple jobs at risk of being automated through artificial intelligence, but also coders or web designers or lawyers like myself. So if you'd been hoping for a bright future doing due diligence for the M&A team at Slaughter and May, I fear that in the next couple of years, you might be out of business. Now, this leads to an existential threat for those people who will lose their jobs. Existential in the sense that they will not be able to feed their families. They will lose their sources of income. And because through the Industrial Revolution, a lot of manual labor moved to intellectual occupations, which are now being automated by artificial intelligence, it is not clear that the people who are losing their jobs due to automation in artificial intelligence will be qualified to take up new job opportunities created through artificial intelligence. And thus, I put it to you, artificial intelligence does bear a risk, an existential risk of threatening our social contract as we have it in society and eroding social cohesion. Because even if you don't buy that, there is also a further risk, and that is at a global scale. Because, of course, artificial intelligence, because of the speed that it is developing at, the great potential for GDP growth it has, it is a sort of dreadnought moment in the geopolitical framework. There is a great threat of other states suddenly getting enormous growth. And these could be fantastic states and a great opportunity for them, but it could also be tyrannies, dictatorships, authoritarian states suddenly gaining enormous power. We can see, for instance, China with extremely strong development in artificial intelligence. And this does also bear a great risk for us on the geopolitical scale of living life in the free world. But apart from these general threats of disturbance of the geopolitical framework of the domestic situation we live in, there are, of course, also dangerous and mischievous uses which also pose existential threats to various values which we hold dear. For instance, deep fakes already now can be created, images which look genuine, which show people in very compromising situations, and these pose an existential threat to people's dignity and reputation. Face recognition software in the hands of private entities or states poses an existential threat to privacy when combined with artificial intelligence. And a further very grave threat, which I believe one of the greatest of the artificial intelligence which we have now, is fake news created by artificial intelligence, articles which seem very genuine and thought through, accompanied by images which seem to back the claims made, disseminated over the World Wide Web in the service of a foreign state trying to intervene in elections or hampering the democratic process. And if we do not know what the sort of factual basis is we're basing our decisions on in a democracy, this makes it impossible for us to come together as a society and find out what we should do facing a certain set of facts. And this is an existential threat to democracy and the way we live. Now, I believe I've shown various ways in which we can see that artificial intelligence bears existential risks for the way we live and values we hold dear. And this is not only a remote risk or some sort of ivory tower possibility I've come up with, but the trouble is that there are just no safeguards to prevent this effectively. Of course, as has been pointed out, we've had many great technological advancements which have changed society. However, these could usually be harnessed, the good of these, through regulation, because the risks could be mitigated by putting it in boundaries which would make them safe for use in society. However, through the extremely fast development of artificial intelligence, and at the same time the great potential it bears, both for GDP growth, but also for just general power projection, it is very difficult to find international consensus on regulating artificial intelligence. If a state wants to in some way intervene in other states it is not friendly and unfriendly relationships with, it is frankly absurd to think they will agree to international frameworks which prevent development of such artificial intelligence. And furthermore, any regulation will deter development. So they say that, for instance, the United States are the world champions in artificial intelligence, whilst the European Union is the world champion in artificial intelligence regulation and doesn't put out much. So the risk of, if you regulate, you always risk potential in developing artificial intelligence and thus risk falling behind other states, potentially authoritarian states, like, for instance, China. And therefore, if you vote tonight in proposition, you will not be voting for general skepticism of technology. You will not be voting for some overly pessimistic view of the future and what artificial intelligence can bring, but you will be voting for a very realistic view of the technologies which we have on the table now. And you will see that there is a great challenge we must face if we want to harness the power thereof and make sure that we avoid the existential risk that it has. Thank you.